if you have some experiences that you know can be pitfalls for other people, just share them with people. You don't know what you don't know. And once you stub your toe on it and then you go through it, you'll often not make that mistake again. So definitely look out for those pitfalls. But when you experience them, don't just push through it and then say, "Ooh, I'm glad I'm done with that." Get through it and then write it down. What was the problem? What was the root cause of that problem? How are we going to fix it next time? How are we going to make sure that it doesn't happen again? So exciting episode today. I want to recap one of the most recent deals that we did. We just closed 2 weeks ago on 84 units in Columbus. And I'm going to tell you some of the things that went right, some of the things that went wrong, how we're going to avoid them next time. Every deal that we do isn't all rainbows and butterflies. This was the first deal that we closed post or maybe mid-pandemic. So we closed just at the end of September. And we were under contract on this deal for months. And everything got paused because of COVID. Wanted to make sure that we were watching the economic occupancy, make sure that the tenants that were there were still paying. And also want to make sure that the financing was coming through. So 84 units in Columbus. The deal is called National Road. And the reason that we liked the deal is it was an owner that had the property for, 10 or 15 years. About 10 years ago, it's 2 buildings, and there's 28 units on the basement floor. So 14 units on each building that got flooded out and were completely gutted. And the other 56 units were 100% occupied and paying. So we like this deal that was brought to us off market from a broker friend of ours that sold us another 66 units down the road. He knew it would be a good complement to our portfolio because now we're going to be able to float our agents and our leasing agents back and forth between those properties and really get the economies of scale. So these 28 units were gutted. The owner started to do the renovations, but he decided not to get permits on it. Well, the township came in and told him, "Hey, you need permits. You have to shut down the project." And he went back and forth with the township, and the guy was not happy that the township was trying to tell him what to do. So he decided to stop the work and leave it vacant. So if you think about what that means in terms of income, let's just say it's $600 a unit times 28 units. That monthly rent times 12 months, it could have probably cost this guy about $1.5 million in sales price because he decided not to deal with the township. So anyway, offered us a great opportunity. So we knew we would go in there. We'd need a bridge loan to do it. We're under contract. It's March. And COVID hits. And if you remember, between March, April, May, pretty much any type of bridge financing or credit facilities were shut down. So we had a bridge loan in place where we had a term sheet, and we went back to them and they said, "No, we're not lending on this anymore." So now what do we do? So we started negotiating with the seller and seeing if he might be interested in doing some seller-backed financing. Just letting him know, hey, we can't get a bridge loan. So we negotiated with him to bring about 20% of the purchase price down. He would bridge the other 80%, and then we would have to raise the CapEx. Well, the capital expenditure on this building was like $1.2 million. So we still needed to raise a considerable amount of capital. A relationship of mine in New York, I randomly called him because our traditional lender that we usually use was telling us he couldn't find any bridge financing. So years ago, we created a relationship with a boutique lender in Manhattan. They do about $3.5 billion a year in lending, mostly ground up construction, things like that. Refinances in the city, but bigger projects. So we didn't know if this would really be in his wheelhouse. So I texted him. I said, "Hey, John, do you know of any bridge lenders that are lending right now? Because we found some, but they were at like 7%. A 7% bridge lending isn't fantastic. It's not terrible, but we figured we could do it either with the seller and some equity, or we could do it with a better bridge loan." So he said, hey, I think you might be in luck. I have this bridge lender that is aggressively looking for projects here in the States. They're a Japanese bank. One of the largest lenders in American real estate is actually a Japanese bank. So got on a call with them, had a term sheet 3 days later for, let's see, it was just about 85% loan to cost at 4%. Unlike a traditional bridge finance, they didn't allow us to do full non-recourse, but we had to sign personally on about a third of it. So $1.2 million for the CapEx, they put in a separate line of credit that we had to sign on personally. And then they gave us another $2 million and we had to raise $1.1 million. So really good terms. And we went back to the seller and we said, all right, Mr. Seller, you don't have to carry the whole amount, but we would love it if you still carried, say, $850,000. And he said, okay, that's fine. I can do that. Long story short, we go through credit. The bank comes back and says, hey, we can't allow subordinate financing on this deal. We'd like him to stay in as an equity partner. Okay, fine. So our attorneys are going back and forth. They're writing up operating agreements and they're trying to figure out how to get the deal done. And we go back to the seller after negotiating with his attorney and he says, I don't want to be a equity partner, even if it's personally guaranteed. Now the bank is saying that we can't do any subordinate financing, and we're literally days away from closing. So long story short, the seller sends us a notice of default and says, you in the contract said we were going to have subordinate financing. Now you're changing it. And our argument was, yeah, but we have a mortgage contingency and the mortgage isn't allowing us to do this. At the end of the day, we're not litigious. Our company doesn't like to spend time, effort, and energy going after people and fighting and battling in court. We've had instances where we were 100% in the right, but we didn't want to have that battle. We just find that usually your time, effort, and energy is spent better pursuing things that will fulfill you versus things that will drain you. And anybody that's been in a lawsuit knows that most of the time these things are draining. So we decided we're not going to litigate, but the only course of action was we either pull out of the deal or we go raise the other $850,000. We had about 5 days to do it. So we did it. We got the money together. We closed 2 weeks ago, and now we're executing on our capital expenditure plan. But, just what are the lessons that we learned here? There's a couple of them. First, in the beginning, the broker was just dealing with the seller and us. So we were negotiating. We got to a letter of intent. It was signed. We got to a purchase sale agreement. Our attorney drafted the PSA and sent it to our broker, who presented it to the seller. So lesson number one is make sure that the seller is represented by counsel. This guy didn't want to spend the 10 grand or whatever it was going to be for his attorney. So he just read it himself. And, the reason that that's important is because the documents for either having a seller carryback that was in second position or being put as a limited partner, all of that needed to really be spelled out, and he needed to understand it, and he didn't. So that created the first problem that we could have avoided by just making sure that he was represented by seller's counsel in the beginning. So that's number one. Number two is just communication, right? We have to make sure that we're communicating with not just the broker, but the seller or the seller's counsel and the title company. And there's a lot of parties involved. And if something gets lost in translation, you could get pretty far down the road before you have a definite answer on what the seller is going to do. So that was lesson number two. So we just really wanted to kind of share what those experiences could be. These aren't always very straightforward, and especially in a COVID environment, we had to pivot because of the bridge lending that went away, and then now we got it back. So does he stay in? Does he not stay in? Long story short, seller's happy. He got the money that he wanted to get for selling it. We're happy. The deal was underwritten originally with no seller-backed financing. So the fact that we had to bring the remaining equity to the deal was not a deal killer by any means. It was just a surprise that we had to do it in such a short period of time right before closing. So, but it's a fantastic deal. It's right next to all new Class A retail. There's a brand new Walmart across the street. It's really the worst building on the nicest block. So we're really excited about it. But yeah, I just want to share with you guys some of these challenges that we go through. And, are they avoidable? I think, you can hedge yourself enough, but this was kind of a special case, special deal, special timing just because of COVID. So if you want to comment, let me know some of your challenges that you've had in the past in some of these deals. We're gearing up for 120 unit closing that we're closing on Thursday. We're just finalizing the credit approval from the bank. So we have this other 120 unit complex that's going to be closing right after. And we're excited to do the work once we get closed on these deals. We have the asset management, the property management pieces all in place. The investors are excited. So we've gotten everything together and gotten ready to close. And now we're debriefing, right? If you read any books that talk about kind of the Navy SEALs and what they do, they always go on a mission, and before they go home and shower, they debrief. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What are we going to do different next time? So we're actually going away this week to discuss internally, without distractions, what happened on the last 3 deals that we've closed over the last 3 months. What went right? What went wrong? What will we do different next time? And then highlight all of those things, bring them to our asset managers, our property managers, our lenders, our internal teams, and just put a spotlight on the things that went wrong, and then talk about how we're going to fix them next time so that it doesn't happen again. Now, things always come out of left field, but, an ounce of preparation versus a pound of cure. So when we see these things go wrong, the Bible says, James 1:2 says, count every trial as blessing, which is difficult to do in the time frame that you're going through it, but important to do in hindsight. Because if you are going through these trials, the blessing that could come of it is you're learning from it, you're growing from it, you're insulating yourself from making those mistakes again, and also being able to teach other people how to do that stuff. So we just wanted to share it with you. If you have some experiences that can be pitfalls for other people, just share them with people. You don't know what you don't know. And once you stub your toe on it and then you go through it, you'll often not make that mistake again. So definitely look out for those pitfalls, but when you experience them, don't just push through it and then say, "Ooh, I'm glad I'm done with that." Get through it and then write it down. What was the problem? What was the root cause of that problem? How are we going to fix it next time? How are we going to make sure that it doesn't happen again? And if you're doing that, that's where the experience comes from, right? There's no substitute for experience. These experiences will make you better, stronger operators if you let it. And, luckily we work with some great investors that were watching us go through this, and some of the timelines shifted and they were patient with us, but they understood what we were trying to accomplish. So anyway, hopefully this helps you out, add some value. I'm sure we will do more and more of these types of podcast episodes with what went wrong, what went right, and what we'll do different next time, kind of our debriefs of post-closing, to hopefully share with you a little bit of insight as to what goes on behind the scenes. I'm going to be bringing Travis, my partner, on in the next couple of episodes to talk more about the asset management plan, the construction management plan, the property management plan. How are we executing on these things now that we own them? And what are some of the challenges that we've had? What are some of the things that went really well? And, that gives you some insight onto how the day-to-day operations of these deals look. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in once again. And we look forward to speaking with you soon. If we haven't already, go to freefromwallstreet.com and sign up, get on our list. Let's schedule a call. We'd love to hear more about your investing goals and how you're achieving them and how we can help. Take care.